Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Trump's early power flex. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, tonight the Trump transition is abuzz with activity. Not only has he moved with lightning speed to fill out his cabinet and other senior positions, he's preparing for a triumphant return to Europe on Saturday for the reopening of Notre Dame. Now, remember, it was badly damaged by a catastrophic fire back in 2019, and many doubted it could ever really be restored. So it's fitting that Macron invited Trump to the ceremony, because not long ago, that's what all the Euro and American elites thought about him and the populist movement, that they were damaged beyond repair.
Well, it's a fitting end to an era that has been characterized by lawlessness.
It may just be the last dying gasp of Trumpism. They're dead. They just don't know it politically. We have seen time and again, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 22, voters reject Trumpism.
It never gets old. All right. Now, let's never forget their drumbeat, which was meant to demoralize Trump's supporters. Now, after the 2020 election, intellectuals with impressive credentials told the world not to worry, that Trump would eventually fade away.
When he's out of power and that oxygen isn't there day by day, I think there'll be a diminution of the power that he holds over the other people in his party.
Oh, thanks, Doris. Other academics were sure the grown-ups in the GOP would sideline Trump.
I think what we're seeing at the moment is the Republican Party establishment humoring Donald Trump all the way out the White House. And I think they will then make sure that whatever happens, he is not the nominee in 2024.
Never will be the nominee again, ever. Well, same deal over in Europe, where even pre-COVID they tried to wish the appeal of populism away, noting Le Pen's setbacks. And later that year, the Trump effect was supposed to transform Europe, but it hasn't. That was that title. Or they cited the COVID-19 pandemic. Has COVID killed off populism in Europe? All of it was wrong. Just like the war hawks were wrong a few months ago, trying to scare voters about Trump.
First of all, the world is scared to death of the return of Donald Trump, and it goes back to the 1930s. They worry that we're just going to quit on the world.
Doesn't it all go back to the 1930s? They're out of ideas. So, right, Trump the peacemaker was going to be the threat to the world. Now, it's entirely fitting that while Trump's fielding invites and calls from world leaders, Biden is in Africa. Is this what we call a guided tour? And his sense of humor is no better than his sense of direction.
We Bidens are like poor relatives. We show up when we're invited, stay longer than we should, eat all your food, and don't know when to go home. But you've been very, very generous and hospitable. Thank you.
The guy on the right in the back fell asleep. Now, he said they've been generous in Africa. Wait, Biden was busy celebrating Giving Tuesday with our money.
I'm announcing over $1 billion in new humanitarian support for Africans displaced from homes by historic droughts.
Now, this seemed to be part compensation for slavery, part for climate change, with the usual bad writing, bad jokes, and bad delivery.
As you know, I'm in the final weeks of my presidency. You don't have to clap for that. You can if you want. Because although I don't know exactly what the future will hold, I know the future runs through Angola, through Africa. I mean it sincerely. I'm not kidding.
God's honest truth, Dr. Jill. Now, I watched most of this tragic address, and its apologetic, patronizing tone was yet another reminder of why Trump won. Now, although he's all about strategic partnerships, Trump is, with other countries, when they benefit the United States, it's never done with cringy obsequiousness. No, instead, Trump operates from a position of strength. Remember, for years before he ran for president, he bemoaned how politicians let America get ripped off and taken advantage of by other countries.
What would you do differently, Donald?
I'd make our allies, forgetting about the enemies you can't talk to so easily, I'd make our allies pay their fair share. We're a debtor nation.
Oh, boy, he was right then, and he's right now. Why shouldn't we be America first? As we saw during COVID, China put China first. Same in Germany, when German leaders banned the export of its PPE to protect its citizens first. I don't forget any of this. They've always had a strong Trump-like protectionist strain in Europe. Look at their trade policy, slapping exports and other restrictions on American dairy, agriculture, wine, and cars, all meant to protect European farmers and automobile manufacturers. It's Europe first. Now, why should we blame them? We use our leverage, they use theirs. What's the point of having countries if they don't put their own people first? That's always been the point of Trump and other people who agree with him. But listening to Biden today, it sounded more like Angola first. Countries with their hands out love having a weak American president like Biden in office. Remember, they were positively giddy in 2020.
It's a great feeling. It's a feeling of relief to see America back. As of January, we will feel much less lonely than we have felt in these last 4 years. It has been a very difficult 4 years, and yes, the feeling of hostility has been there, in particular towards the European Union, because it was very clear to me that President Trump didn't particularly appreciate or like multilateral experiments.
Multilateral experiments, yes, you bet he did not like them, because we always got the short end of the stick. Now, with Joe, though, this is true, is happy because the free riding never ends. And because elites at home and abroad believe we're a fundamentally evil country, existentially racist. They hate Trump's America First approach. Punishment is what they prefer for our middle class, not prosperity. But the truth is, open borders and unfair trade have been a disaster for the average working person. And from Syracuse, New York, to Malmö, Sweden, it's taken a wrecking ball to countries' cultures, safety, and harmony. Populism has not failed. Globalization has failed. Tonight, the French government is on the verge of collapse. Yet Argentina is coming back under Trump-loving Javier Milei. The populist Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, is a rising star in Europe. The Euro elites and American left may not be happy tonight, but the working people whom they look down upon, whose concerns they ignored for decades, may finally have a fighting chance. And that's the angle.
Biden pardoned his son and then went on an African safari. After 36 hours, the press finally found him in Angola.
Mr. President, why did
Mr. President, why did you change your mind and pardon your son?
What's Biden really doing in Africa? We'll have a special report on that later in the show. White House sources tell TMZ that Biden decided on the pardon months ago, but was just lying about not pardoning Hunter to make himself look good before the election. Explains why Hunter was walking around Malibu this summer like he knew something.
Hunter, how are you holding up?
Great, man.
Hunter, are you expecting a pardon? Is that something that you can answer on? All right, sir. Listen, I'm a fan. You fought the good fight.
The Biden family knew Hunter was going to get pardoned the whole time. That was a part of the plan. If he ever got in trouble, Barack, Joe, Kamala, any Democrat president, just get him out of jail. The New York Times claims Biden just changed his mind over Thanksgiving dinner and suddenly told his staff that it was time to end all of this. That's all spin from the Biden camp. They say he was worried Trump would get revenge. Well, why would Trump be in a vengeful mood? Maybe because Biden almost got him shot dead and tried to make him rot in jail. Now Biden Democrats are saying, of course Biden's a liar. He was going to pardon Hunter the whole time.
Do we actually believe that Joe Biden was just going to let the president-elect's administration make good on their promise to go after his son? Joe Biden is leaving the stage. He's leaving the stage. This is not a Donald Trump situation where he could potentially come back and run for president. He is done. He has done everything Joe Biden has played by all the rules that people told him we had to play by, right? He's done it all. So good for Joe Biden and good for Hunter, I say.
Obama Democrats are saying, he could have done it a little differently.
I think people will understand his act as a father, but not as a president. And one of the things that confused me, Anderson, was just as a tactical matter, wouldn't it have been better to pardon a whole bunch of people who deserve pardons as part of a pardon that gestures to throw this out here alone and hop on a plane to Africa on a Sunday night. It was just handled poorly on top of everything else.
The whole thing was a Joe Biden cleanup job. Democrats knew the pardon was a cleanup job. They're just arguing over timing and tactics. Democrats are like, yeah, of course they were money laundering, but I don't like how he stuck the landing. Biden lied about it, blamed Jill, flew off to Africa, and left his party in the middle of another identity crisis. Deep Democratic fissures spilling into the public view. Biden exposed his family, then his party. Man's got a thing for voyeurism, just like his son. Democrats are complaining behind the scenes that Joe looks egotistical, sinful, and stubborn. He was supposed to be this defender of democracy, Mr. No one's above the law. And now Democrats think Biden sacrificed the party's moral high ground. Listen to Jon Stewart.
Finally, Democrats have a moral perch from which they can judge without shame, hypocrisy, or nuance.
Breaking news, President Biden has issued a pardon for his son, Hunter Biden.
Mother! At every turn, Democrats keep getting caught creating a purity test for a system that they can't seem to pass themselves. Rules, loopholes, and norms. The distance between the systems Democrats say they are revering and the one that they're using when they need to is why people think it's rigged. Use the rules, use the loopholes, the norms, but also use it to help the people.
Democrats never had the moral high ground. They just talked about having the moral high ground. While they were spying, lying, censuring, raiding, arresting, bribing, you name it, they did it. But Stewart's right about this. They weren't getting dirty to help the people. They were doing it to help themselves. Some Democrats are tired of all the pearl clutching. Quote, what's the point of holding the moral high ground? It's time to stop playing nice. Democrats think they've been playing nice this whole time while they arrest us, bribe kids, and spy on parents? Well, a faction of the party wants a pardon palooza. Democrats are lobbying Biden to hand out blanket pardons for Jack Smith, Robert Mueller, Merrick Garland, Fani Willis, Letitia James, even Dr. Fauci. Why would Dr. Fauci need a pardon? Or any of these people, if they've done nothing wrong? Well, they've done a lot wrong. You know it. They know it. And they're trying everything they can to get away with it. You don't get to abuse power and beg for blanket pardons. Pardons are for people who deserve leniency, who have served some time, maybe deserve a second chance, or are related to the president. Other Democrats are like, you know, there's a lot of other people not named Hunter Biden with tax and gun charges. They could use some help, too.
He's used the power of the pardon more sparingly for people who are not his son than you would expect from a Democratic president. If you're going to do it, don't just do it for your son. There are a lot of American sons and daughters who could use the same kind of relief.
Don't stop at Hunter Biden.
Thank you.
Pardon the 40 people who are on death row right now to get them off of death row, number one. Number two, pardon the 3,000 people who are in federal jail for trumped-up marijuana charges. Pardon them as well so they can get back to their communities and contribute to their economies. That's what the president should do.
How Democrats went from Biden's not going to pardon his son because no one's above the law to free serial killers, I don't know. But there are reasons society has consequences. Consequences keep people from hurting other people and from hurting themselves. Listen here to our colleague Charles Payne.
My brother's getting out of jail on Friday. My brother was among the first 100 crack addicts in America. I'm telling you, at least the first 100, 200. In the hood, when he came upstairs and told us about crack, how great it was, I had never heard of it before. I kind of don't want him to come out of jail. Because before he went in, he stopped by my aunt's house, and he didn't, he lives away from here, and he didn't have shoes on in the middle of winter. I keep his commissary. I give him $100 a week in commissary. He's like a kingpin in there because no one gets a nickel. I mean, that's how bad it is in there. And I know he's safe. I know he's captured. But what's happening with the Biden, and this is the ultimate sign of elitism, of just sort of entitlement, gone amok, that Democrats have railed against for so long. It's a slap in the face to everyone that that Joe Biden gets to do this.
Yeah.
It really is.
Hunter's liberal privilege kept him out of trouble his whole life. And he never learned from his mistakes because Daddy was always there to save him. And while Daddy was saving his son, who was buying crack, millions of poor Americans, many without daddies, never got saved. They got put in prison for decades because Joe Biden was tough on crime. Those Americans had a lot less crack than Hunter was holding. That's what's making Democrats sick to their stomach tonight. Biden was never this rule of law guy. Look around. If he didn't like a law, he'd break it. He's been smacked down by the courts more than anyone. His family doesn't pay taxes, but you do. And he takes your tax money and spends it on migrants, and then calls you a bigot for saying that's not fair. See what he's doing here? He's claiming the moral high ground when he's really trying to import voters. Biden says the laptop was fake and then pardoned his son for everything we found on it. Everyone's waking up to the fact that this whole presidency was a lie.
You were intending to do this all along, which again is no problem. But it doesn't make you any less full of it. You do understand that the Democrats are no longer in a position to say anything, right? You can talk till the cows come home. You're whistling into the wind. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say right now. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your party. Because when you pardon your son, going back on your word, telling the American people there was no way that you were going to pardon him when everybody and their grandmama knew you were lying but didn't hold you accountable for it. And now you've confirmed what people believed, that you were probably going to be lying about that very thing that you said you wouldn't do for your son.
Are any Democrats willing to raise their hands and say, I'm a proud Biden Democrat? Does anybody want to be associated with Joe Biden at this point? If you are, it's an open invitation to come on this show. Come on the show and tell me you're a Biden Democrat. Why you're proud. Give me one example. I don't even think Biden's getting a library. No donor is going to give this 82-year-old failed president money for a library. What are they going to get out of it? Biden's going to have to store all his papers in his garage next to his Corvette. Hunter can stand in the driveway and collect entrance fees. Vox says for Democrats, the Hunter Biden pardon is a problem and an opportunity. It's now their chance to break from the big guy. It's already happening. Joe just lost Chuck Todd.
You read the Hallie Biden transcript, and that's Bo's widow.
Yes.
And essentially he turned her into a crack addict. And this was all happening in 2017, 2018. And Joe Biden were so concerned about their family that they decided to run for president.
Yep.
So when you talk about the word selfish, it's almost like the word doesn't, their decision to run for president put the entire Democratic Party and the United States of America in the position that it's in now.
Really, Chuck? Really? Chuck Todd's disgusted now when he doesn't have a show anymore? Everyone knew this 4 years ago because it was in the laptop he was saying was Russian. Lying about pardoning Hunter was the last straw for Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd didn't say diddly when Biden made the American people broke. He only had enough when Biden made a liar out of him. So where does the Democratic Party go now? Clinton's been Me Too'd. Barack's in hiding. Biden's Jimmy Carter. So what's next? Well, there's a struggle for the soul of the Democratic Party, and no one knows what to do. Writer Francis Buckley is asking how Democrats can pull the plug from the corrupt ruling class and reconnect with real Americans. He says this: the party would have to abandon the conceit that their opponents are either bigots or stupid. And they'd have to do so without adopting the socialist agenda of a Senator Sanders. They'd have to wean themselves from the serotonin rush that comes from thinking that they're the anointed ones, rejected by the voters. They'd have to give up on the idea that they alone defend democracy. They'd have to say goodbye to the haters in the party.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, Joe Biden is pledging $1 billion in disaster recovery aid, but not for the people of Georgia, North Carolina, where temperatures now have dropped below zero in many areas. Many have inadequate housing. It has been 2 months now since Hurricane Helene devastated the area, and some Americans, our fellow Americans, they are living in tents with their children. But that $1 billion in federal aid, no, it's not going to rebuild homes in North Carolina. Instead, Joe is sending your hard-earned tax dollars to Africa and to Ukraine. In Africa, he's trying to help the citizens of Angola recover from a recent drought, which is fine, but when are we going to take care of our fellow Americans? In fact, just hours after gifting his son an 11-year get-out-of-jail-free card, Biden traveled all the way to Africa to make the announcement, or at least that was the plan. Take a look at your screen. A very physically weak, tired, mentally confused president could barely walk or talk, and at times he wasn't making any sense at all. You decide.
You know, with you in Angola, a vibrant city, and I look, not the city. The city, I know, is not Angola, but in Angola, in a vibrant city.
A fitting end to a historically bad presidency marked by weakness, incompetence, utter dishonesty, corruption, and putting the interests of foreign nationals well before the needs of his fellow Americans. Thankfully, this very sad, pathetic chapter in American history, it is now coming to an end. America First is back in a big way. World leaders, it's fascinating to watch. It's like the Trump effect, you can call it. The United States maintaining a huge amount of leverage. Donald Trump is not afraid to use it. And after Donald Trump's threat of tariffs, well, the president-elect reported that Mexico's president agreed to secure their own border and stop the migrant caravans that are heading towards our border. And north of the border, well, little Justin Trudeau immediately hopped on a plane, flies down to beautiful Palm Beach in Mar-a-Lago, where he all but begged Donald Trump not to impose any new taxes on Canadian imports. And according to reports, Donald Trump joked that Canada might have to become our 51st state if they can't handle the tariffs. Look at this.
And tonight we're getting some new details about that Trump-Trudeau dinner from two people who were at the table. We are told that when Trudeau told President-elect Trump that new tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump joked to him that if Canada can't survive without ripping off the U.S. to the tune of $100 billion a year, then maybe Canada should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor.
And in Trumpian fashion, earlier today, Donald Trump, well, he continued to troll our neighbors to the north with this meme posted on Truth Social showing the president-elect looking out over the vast Canadian wilderness with the caption, "Oh, Canada." Meanwhile, across the Pacific Ocean, communist China, all of a sudden, very quiet, keeping a very low profile. The CCP's once constant threats against our allies, well, are non-existent at the moment. In Russia, Donald Trump already spoke to Vladimir Putin, according to reports, warning Russia's dictator not to escalate the war in Ukraine, and, quote, reminded him of our ability and sizable military presence that is in Europe. It now appears that Putin and Zelensky are more willing than ever to hammer out a peace deal, Zelensky going as far as to acknowledge territorial disputes can be settled peacefully, all while Joe seems hell-bent on escalating war in Europe by providing ballistic missiles to Ukraine that you're paying for that would be able to reach into Russian territory, which then caused Vladimir Putin to respond with, hypersonic missile technology and the threat of a nuclear attack. That part is chilling with only 50 days to go, Joe Biden knowing that Donald Trump wants a negotiated settlement. And then in the Middle East, after Donald Trump threatened to unleash hell on the terrorists of Gaza, what a surprise. Hamas expressing an interest in a new peace deal, but Donald Trump made clear the American hostages better be returned by January 20th, or there will be hell to pay, and Hamas will face severe consequences. Now, Biden's tepid, disjointed foreign policy will soon be in the rearview mirror, like a bad memory that we all wish we could forget. In fact, in Western Europe, American allies have already moved on from Biden. The French President Macron inviting Donald Trump to be the honored guest at the country's long-awaited reopening of Notre Dame this coming weekend. Back at home, the Democratic Party is an unmitigated disaster. They have no real leadership. They have no agenda. There's a lot of finger-pointing. They have no coherent messaging. You could say a dumpster fire. And today, in a now deleted tweet, House Democrats mocked Americans over their inflation concerns, if you can believe this. Meanwhile, Americans have been suffering for 4 years. Meanwhile, one of the Democratic Party's biggest cheerleaders, Chucky Todd, over at NBC and MSDNC, is now lashing out at Joe Biden. Would have been nice if he did this before the election, but don't hold your breath.
I followed the Hunter Biden trial very closely. I read every transcript, all the testimony, because that's what all that was made public. And there is, you want to get angry, just as somebody in just all these mixed emotions. You read the Hallie Biden transcript, and that's Bo's widow.
Yes.
And essentially he turned her into a crack addict. And this was all happening in 2017, 2018. And Joe Biden were so concerned about their family that they decided to run for president.
Yep.
So when you talk about the word selfish, it's almost like the word doesn't, their decision to run for president put the entire Democratic Party and the United States of America in the position that it's in now.
Why didn't Chucky Todd say that 2017 and 18? Now, liberal Joe and Mika, they have a different take. They are lashing out at their fellow radical left-wing journalists, the legacy media that is now dead, accusing them of hysteria. Why? For simply reporting the facts surrounding Biden's unprecedented pardon of his troubled son, zero-experience Hunter. Take a look.
I'm not asking you to take sides here. I'm just saying, talk about the frustration that many Democrats are having on the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, a lot of mainstream organizations blowing this up to a size that they believe is really out of proportion given everything Donald Trump has done in the past and what he's doing right now.
Didn't we play last night on this program, that very same show, saying that Joe Biden would never pardon Hunter because he's so different than Donald Trump? Oh, okay, never mind. No matter how you try to sugarcoat it, Joe Biden's legacy is not good. He will be known as a corrupt liar, as well as an incompetent leader in the throes of what is and has been a steep cognitive decline, controlled like a puppet by left-wing bureaucrats all in the Washington swamp. The American people made the right choice. They made the right decision. Good times, they're ahead. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.